You ever have that strange feeling like someone's watching you? Not in a creepy way, but in that soft, lingering kind of way. Like you can almost feel it in the air when they're near. Not because they say anything, but because their presence says everything. I've come to realize that love, the kind that really digs into your bones, doesn't always show up with a grand speech or romantic gestures. Sometimes it tiptoes in through the quiet. I remember this time in my life when I kept looking for love in all the usual ways. You know, the obvious stuff. Words, attention, clarity. I wanted someone to just say it. I love you. I thought that was the only way to feel safe in it. But the funny thing is, the deepest kind of love I ever received wasn't announced at all. It lived in silence, in pauses, in those moments that felt like nothing but meant everything. There was someone, I won't say their name, but they were always around, not hovering, not obvious, just there, consistent, kind, thoughtful in ways that slipped under my radar until I started piecing it together later. Like how they always remembered the little things I'd say, even in passing, how they'd offer me their jacket without making a big deal out of it, or show up with my favorite snack when I hadn't even mentioned I was craving it. At the time, I just chalked it up to being a good friend. But now, looking back, I realized that was love. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't beg to be noticed. It just is. You know, Carl Jung once said something about how real connections form in the unconscious, in the parts of ourselves we don't always see clearly. I think that's why this kind of love feels so hard to describe. It doesn't come from the surface, it grows in the unseen places. It's more like a soft current under your skin than a loud wave crashing over you. I used to get frustrated with it. I'd wonder why they wouldn't just tell me what they felt. Why the silence? Why the restraint? But now I think it's because the feeling itself was too sacred to be forced into words. Maybe they were afraid, or maybe they just didn't need to say it. They were showing it in every small, deliberate action. I remember once, we were sitting on this old park bench, just talking about music and random things. I mentioned how I used to hum a certain tune when I was anxious as a kid, something my mom used to sing. I didn't even think they were really paying attention, but a few days later they hummed that same tune under their breath when I was having a rough day. They didn't say, "Hey, I remember what you told me." They just did it. Like it was their way of saying, "I see you, I hear you, I care." That moment stayed with me because it wasn't about performance or recognition. It was about connection, the kind that doesn't demand to be praised or reciprocated, the kind that lives in details, in tone, in presence. And I think we miss that a lot, you know? We're so busy looking for the fireworks, we overlook the candlelight. We want declarations, not realizing that someone sitting beside us, in silence during our darkest hour, might be offering us the purest form of love there is. It makes me wonder how many people go unnoticed in their love, how many sit across from someone they adore, silently carrying that feeling like a secret treasure, hoping, maybe even aching, to express it, but too afraid to disturb its sacredness. Or maybe they think it's not enough if it's not said out loud. But it is enough. More than enough. Because love isn't always loud. It's not always bold. Sometimes it's the hand that reaches for yours without a word. The glance that lingers for half a second too long. The way someone remembers your favorite tea or listens to the same story again because they know it matters to you. It's easy to overlook these things if you're not paying attention. But when you start to really see, when you begin to tune in to the quiet symphony of affection happening around you, it changes everything. You begin to realize that love has many dialects, and some of the most powerful ones have no words at all. And maybe that's the real beauty of it. That kind of love doesn't need a stage or a spotlight. It doesn't burn out quickly like passion often does. It's steady, gentle, a quiet pulse in the background of your life. I think that's what I miss most about them now. Not any big moment or dramatic scene, just the small things, the way they noticed me, the way their presence made me feel seen, even when I felt invisible to the rest of the world. So, if you're wondering whether someone loves you, maybe don't just listen for the words. Look for the spaces between them, the pauses, the glances, the gestures. That's where love hides, not because it's afraid, but because it's sacred, because it's waiting for someone who's willing to see it without needing to hear it. And who knows, maybe someone is doing that for you right now. There's something almost magical about the way we start to unconsciously reflect the people we care about. It doesn't happen on purpose. You don't wake up one day and think, I'm going to talk like them now, or let me pick up that habit they have. It's just, you spend enough time in someone's presence and your heart starts tuning itself to their rhythm. Like you're slowly learning their internal melody, not because you have to, but because some part of you wants to. I didn't notice it right away, but over time I caught myself echoing them. Their phrases became mine. Their way of laughing, even the timing of it, found its way into my voice. It was like I had unknowingly been painting my emotional world in their colors. A friend of mine pointed it out once, said, "You're starting to sound like them." I brushed it off at the time, but later it hit me. That's what happens when you feel deeply connected to someone. Their presence seeps into you. It's not about losing yourself, it's about resonance, like two instruments slowly aligning to create a harmony that didn't exist before. Psychologists call it mirroring, and sure, that's the technical term. But when you've felt it in your bones, when you've caught yourself instinctively repeating their gestures or finding comfort in their favorite things, it feels like something bigger than science. It feels like intimacy. And it made me think, maybe we don't fall in love with people the way we think we do. Maybe we become them, piece by piece. Not in some dramatic, all-consuming way, but gently, softly. Like the way water shapes stone, or how sunlight slowly fades fabric over time. We absorb each other, their pain, their joy, their quirks. They leave fingerprints on us, whether we want them to or not. I remember they used to always tap their fingers on the table while thinking, a tiny rhythm like a heartbeat. One day I caught myself doing the same thing during a meeting. It wasn't nerves, it was them, still echoing inside me. At first, I thought it was a sign that I was losing myself in the connection, but the more I sat with it, the more I realized, maybe it's a way of carrying them with me, a quiet tribute to the bond we shared, even if it was never named out loud. You know what's even more strange? They started picking up things from me, too. Little expressions I use, the way I explain ideas with my hands, the way I shorten certain words. It wasn't planned, it just happened. We were unknowingly shaping each other, and that's when I understood something important. Love, the real kind, isn't about ownership or labels, it's about influence. Quiet, invisible influence that lingers long after someone has walked out of the room. But here's the part that always chokes me up. They never said it. Not once. Not in words. And yet I felt it in everything. In how they listened, how they showed up, how their body language shifted when I entered a room, in how I became a part of their rhythm and they became part of mine. Isn't that wild? To think that someone can hold you so close in their heart that they start reflecting your spirit back to you, and yet still never speak it aloud. That kind of love is fragile, but it's also profound. It lives in the moments you don't even realize are moments until much later. And when it's gone, or if it never gets the chance to bloom fully, you carry it like a soft ache, a beautiful, haunting ache. Sometimes I wonder if that's what we're really craving in love. Not just to be seen or heard, but to be mirrored. To feel like who we are matters so much. To someone that we become part of their internal language, their gestures, their thoughts, their silences. And when that happens, You feel it in your nervous system. Something shifts. The world feels warmer, more familiar. Even when it's confusing, even when it's unspoken, you feel it. So now, when I catch myself picking up someone's habits, or when I notice someone gently mirroring mine, I don't brush it off. I pay attention, because maybe that's love showing up in its quietest, most honest form, not demanding anything, not announcing itself, just being. And if you've ever found yourself mimicking someone without even realizing it, maybe ask yourself, what does this person mean to me? Or if someone starts to reflect your light back to you, maybe ask, are they carrying something for me in silence? Because sometimes the mirror is the message. You'd think that love would bring people closer, right? That when someone feels something deep, they'd want to be around you more, speak more, connect more. But sometimes the opposite happens, and it's one of the strangest, most painful things to try to understand. When the person who seems to care about you starts pulling away. I've lived through that, and I still remember the confusion. They'd been so warm, so present, until suddenly they weren't. Not entirely gone, but distant in ways I couldn't quite explain. Their messages got shorter. Their eyes stopped holding mine for too long. They'd change the subject if we got too close to anything emotional. It was like something inside them closed the door halfway, and I was left standing on the other side, wondering what I'd done wrong. But over time, I learned something that changed how I see those moments. It wasn't that they didn't feel anything, it's that they felt too much. When emotions get too big, they stop being safe. They start to threaten the walls we've spent years building around our hearts. And when someone like that, someone guarded, someone wounded, starts to feel vulnerable, their instinct isn't to run toward love. It's to hide from it, protect themselves. It took me a long time to realize that distance isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's fear in disguise, fear of being seen too deeply, fear of needing someone too much, fear of breaking apart if the feeling isn't mutual. And so they withdraw, not because they don't care, but because caring has suddenly become overwhelming. I remember this one night. We were at a small gathering surrounded by friends, and someone jokingly teased them about being too close to me. I laughed it off, but they froze. Just for a moment, a flash of something in their face. Embarrassment, panic, vulnerability, I couldn't quite tell. But from that point on, something shifted. They started creating space between us. Not physically, they were still around, but emotionally, like they were pulling back before anything could be exposed. At first, I was hurt. I thought I must have crossed a line, said something wrong, but eventually I saw it for what it was. A defense mechanism. They weren't running from me. They were running from what they were starting to feel. It's like how we shield our eyes from a blinding light. Love, when it's real and intense, can be just as blinding, especially when you're not ready for it, especially if you've been hurt before. And sometimes, to the person experiencing those overwhelming emotions, retreat feels like the only safe move. Carl Jung once talked about how the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject or fear, often gets projected onto others. And I think that's what was happening. Maybe I represented something to them that they weren't ready to face within themselves. Vulnerability, need, desire, hope. All the things that make us feel alive and scared at the same time. I've started to see those moments of retreat not as signs of indifference, but as signs of depth. Because people don't hide from what they don't care about. They don't avoid what's meaningless to them. It's only when something matters that we start to get scared of it. So now, when I see someone pull away after showing me glimpses of closeness, I try to soften instead of harden. I remind myself that love doesn't always walk in a straight line. Sometimes it needs room to breathe. Sometimes the very act of stepping back is an unconscious plea. Please don't make me say it, Please don't make me feel all of this at once. Please just let me figure out what to do with this storm inside me. It's heartbreaking, but it's human. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that distance, I hope you'll remember this. It's not always about you. Sometimes it's about everything that person has been carrying. Everything they've been trying to keep hidden, even from themselves. You just happened to touch a place so tender they didn't know how to hold it. That doesn't mean you should wait forever. It doesn't mean you owe them your heart without reciprocation. But maybe, just maybe, it means you don't have to take their silence as proof that love isn't there, because sometimes the deepest love is the one most afraid to be seen. There's a kind of love that hides behind laughter. It sounds strange, I know. Love and humor don't usually sit side by side in our minds. But I've seen it, I've felt it. When someone cares deeply but doesn't quite know how to handle the depth of it, they turn it into a joke. They tease you, give you nicknames, poke fun at you in that playful, familiar way. It's not to mock, it's to mask, because it's safer to laugh than to say the thing that might break you open. This was one of the hardest things for me to understand. For a long time I thought, if someone jokes around all the time, they can't be serious about me. But looking back now, I see how wrong I was. Sometimes the person who's laughing the most around you is the one who's feeling the most, and hiding it the hardest. There was this period when things between us felt like a game, but not in a bad way. More like this ongoing dance of words and gestures. They'd tease me about the way I hold my coffee mug, or how I always over-explain things. I'd roll my eyes and play along. But then they'd say something that cut just a little deeper, something that made me wonder if there was more underneath. One day they called me by a ridiculous nickname in front of others, and I laughed, but part of me was stung. I thought, why can't they just be real with me? I didn't see it then, but now I realize that nickname was a shield, a way to keep things light, to be close without getting too close. And I started to notice the pattern, the way their teasing always came right after a moment of real connection, like we'd share something quiet, something almost tender, and then boom, they'd crack a joke, distract, deflect, cover it up with humor. It was as if they were trying to erase the vulnerability before it became dangerous. We don't talk enough about how love wears masks. And humor, that's one of the most common ones. It's disarming. It creates comfort. It makes the emotional intensity feel manageable. But behind it, if you're really paying attention, you can sense the tremble, the longing, the fear. I've done it too. Joked when I wanted to cry, teased when I wanted to confess. I think we all do it in our own way, because being earnest, being open, it's terrifying. What if the other person doesn't feel the same? What if we ruin the friendship? What if we expose a part of ourselves that we can't take back? So instead, we play, we banter, we build a fortress out of laughter. But here's what I've learned. If someone is constantly creating little moments of connection through humor, seeking you out, lighting up around you, inventing excuses to engage, that's not nothing. That's not just friendly energy. That's love looking for a way in without breaking anything on its way through. And you can feel it, can't you? That strange pull beneath the surface. You laugh, but your heart aches. You smile, but you're waiting, just waiting for the moment they finally drop the mask. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But either way, the love is real. It's just dressed up in a costume it doesn't know how to take off. What breaks my heart is how many people never see it. How many never realize that the constant teasing, the playful eye contact, the shared jokes, they're all love notes written in invisible ink. You have to hold them up to the light to read them. And when you do, wow, it changes everything. You start seeing how hard it is for some people to say, I care about you. how they've maybe never been taught how to hold that kind of emotion without trembling, so they pour it into laughter instead. Because laughter, unlike vulnerability, doesn't leave a wound when it lands wrong. It's tender, it's tragic, and it's beautiful. So if someone's always teasing you, joking with you, poking fun in that soft way, pay attention. Look beneath the words. Feel the space between them. That might be their way of staying close to you without risking the fall. And maybe, just maybe, what they're trying to say is, I love you. I just don't know how to say it yet. You can tell a lot about how someone feels by how they remember you. Not just the big stuff, your birthday or your favorite movie, but the small, almost throwaway things. The song you hum when you're cleaning. That one time you mentioned liking apricot jam. The story you told about your dog when you were 8. When someone's in love, truly, deeply, they collect these fragments like sacred relics, quietly, without asking for recognition. I started noticing it in the way they'd recall things I didn't even remember saying. One day I mentioned in passing how I used to eat toast with cinnamon and sugar when I was sick as a kid. It was a comfort thing, nostalgic and oddly specific. A couple of weeks later I came over and there it was. Toast, cinnamon, sugar, no explanation, no spotlight, just there. And that's when I felt it. The depth of their noticing. It wasn't about impressing me. It wasn't performative. It was reverent. A kind of memory keeping that said, you matter, I listen, even when you think I'm not. It's one of the purest forms of love, I think, this quiet attentiveness, no expectation of reward. Just the simple act of witnessing another person so closely that even their smallest details become unforgettable. And that's what makes it hurt too. Because when someone remembers you like that, deeply, thoroughly, it's hard not to hope, hard not to read into it. But sometimes they never say anything, never admit how they feel. And you're left holding all their gestures, all their gentle clues, wondering if you imagined it all. But you didn't. People don't remember you like that by accident. Carl Jung once talked about the power of the unconscious, how we connect with people beyond reason or intention. And I think this kind of memory, the emotional kind, lives in that realm. It's not stored in the mind. It's stored in the heart, the soul, the body. Sometimes they'd quote me, repeat something I'd said months ago in a conversation. Not sarcastically, sincerely. Like my words had stayed with them, carved out a little space in their world. I can't tell you how seen that made me feel, not just heard, but kept. It made me wonder how many people I've loved like that, quietly, how many details I've stored away about someone who never really knew. Maybe we all carry secret libraries of each other, memories we visit when we miss them, when we need comfort, when we want to feel close again. There's something profoundly intimate about being remembered. It breaks through all the walls we build around ourselves, because it says, I was paying attention when you thought no one was. And sometimes it's not just about love, it's about longing, the kind that stays unspoken because it feels too big, too heavy, too risky. So instead of confessions, there are gestures. Instead of declarations, there's remembering. I wish more of us realized how meaningful that is, how rare, in a world that's so loud and fast and full of distractions, someone quietly choosing to remember you, to store parts of you within them. That's sacred, that's real. If you've ever had someone do that for you, someone who brings up something you forgot you shared, or surprises you with something you once said you loved, hold on to that. That's love in its most humble, most human form. And if you find yourself doing that for someone, tucking away their quirks, revisiting their stories in your mind, maybe ask yourself why. Maybe you already know the answer. Because love, even in silence, finds a way to remember. You can always tell when someone's energy changes in your presence. It's like the air shifts, like a room that suddenly feels warmer or heavier, even if nothing's been said out loud. And the thing is, most people don't even notice they're doing it. But when someone feels something real for you, it shows up in their body before it ever shows up in their words. I used to think I was imagining it. The way they'd sit straighter when I walked into the room, how their voice would either light up or falter. Sometimes they'd talk a mile a minute, other times they'd get strangely quiet, like they didn't trust themselves to speak. It was subtle, but once you notice it, you can't unsee it. And it's not just them, I've felt it in myself too. That nervous shift when you're around someone who matters, that strange inability to act normal. Suddenly you're overthinking every move, every word. Your hands don't know where to go. Your laugh sounds weird to your own ears. You try to be chill, but your whole body is betraying you. It's wild how love, especially the kind you haven't admitted to yourself yet, can rearrange your behavior without permission. There was one time we ran into each other unexpectedly in a coffee shop. I was having a rough day and wasn't in the mood for small talk, but when I saw them, everything shifted. I could see it in their eyes. This flicker of worry, then warmth. Their whole posture changed. They abandoned whatever they were doing to sit beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. They didn't ask what was wrong. They didn't pry. They just sat, close enough for me to feel the steadiness of their presence. And in that moment, something in me softened, not because they said anything profound, but because they didn't have to. That's the thing about energy. It tells the truth even when words don't. You can fake a smile, you can rehearse your lines, but your nervous system always knows, and it speaks through tiny tells. Dilated pupils, fidgety hands, flushed cheeks, a tremble in the voice, or on the other end of the spectrum, total stillness, like the moment is too big to move through, so you just hold your breath and hope they don't notice how hard your heart is pounding. I think that's why so many people fall in love in silence, because their bodies are already screaming the truth, and it feels like speaking it out loud would make the whole thing collapse. It's a kind of emotional gravity. You find yourself pulled toward someone, altering your own orbit just to be near them, but pretending like it's all coincidence. You show up at the same places, sit next to them when you could have sat anywhere else. You brush their arm and act like it meant nothing, but inside, everything is on fire, and it's not manipulation. It's not even conscious. It's instinct. The body always reaches for what it longs for, even when the mind says, stay cool, don't go there. I saw it in them more times than I can count. How they'd light up when we made eye contact across a crowded space. How they'd go out of their way to offer help when they didn't have to. How they'd become suddenly awkward when the room got too quiet, like they didn't know what to do with all the unsaid things between us. And when I finally started to pay attention, I realized something. Love doesn't always make people braver. Sometimes it makes them more afraid, more careful, because the more you care, the more you have to lose. So if someone gets weird around you, not in a bad way, but in that endearing, clumsy, heartful kind of way, don't dismiss it. That might be their heart showing up before their words do. That might be love, raw and unfiltered, finding its way into the space between you. And if you're the one who changes around someone, if you find yourself stumbling or glowing or feeling completely disoriented in their presence, maybe don't fight it so hard. Maybe that's not something to hide. Maybe that's your truth asking to be seen. Because love, whether spoken or not, always leaves a trace in the way we move, in the way we breathe, in the way we forget how to be ourselves, because suddenly being around them makes us want to be something more. There's a kind of love that doesn't ask to be named. It doesn't demand attention or chase after grand gestures. It simply lives, quiet and consistent, in the background of someone's life. A kind of love that shows up not with roses or speeches, but with a blanket when you're cold. A text at the exact moment you didn't realize you needed one. A silent understanding that doesn't need explanation. That's the love I've come to respect the most. They used to care for me in ways I didn't fully recognize at the time. I was always looking for some big reveal, some confession. But instead, I got moments. A hand on my shoulder when I was too tired to speak. A ride home on a rainy night. An extra cup of coffee on my desk before a hard meeting. Things that seemed small, until I realized how deeply they meant I see you. I've got you. I care. It's that invisible kind of protection. Like someone building shelter around you without ever drawing attention to the fact that they're doing it. And the truth is, not everyone knows how to say, "I love you" out loud. Some people only know how to express it through action, through service, through presence. Their love speaks in a different language, one of patience, attunement, and quiet effort. I remember one night I looked exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. I was going through something personal, but I hadn't told anyone, and somehow they just knew. They didn't ask questions. They didn't try to fix it. They just sat beside me, wordless, brought me a glass of water, made sure my phone was charged, pulled a blanket over my shoulders before they left. It was such a simple moment, and yet I think about it all the time, because that's what real love feels like. It's not always loud, it's not always visible, but it's steady, it's safe. It sees you when you feel most invisible. Sometimes I think about how many people are carrying love like that inside them, quietly, courageously, with no guarantee it will ever be returned. No applause, no validation, just the deep desire to keep someone else warm, even if they're standing in the cold alone. And maybe you've been that person. Maybe you've loved someone in silence. Maybe you've been the one who showed up, who remembered, who listened. Maybe you never said it, but you lived it. If that's you, please know it mattered, even if they didn't see it then, even if they never said thank you. That kind of love leaves a mark, on them and on you. It shapes you in the best ways. Or maybe someone's doing that for you right now and you haven't noticed. Look closer. Feel the way they always seem to be there, even when it's inconvenient. Notice the little things they do that don't make sense unless you understand that they care. Really care. Because love, the kind that changes us, often shows up in the spaces where nothing is said, but everything is felt. I think we expect love to announce itself like a storm, but sometimes it's more like a steady rain, soft, constant, and healing. The kind of rain that makes everything grow, even if you don't see it happening right away. So wherever you are in your story, whether you're the one loving or being loved, I hope you learn to recognize it in its quietest forms. The gentle gestures, the remembering, the nervous laughter, the energy shifts, the stillness. I hope you learn to trust those things, because some of the truest love stories are the ones that never needed to be spoken to be real.